Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I want to thank Gaurav, Krishnendu, and the entire Irfan and the entire team at Yubi. I'm used to calling them CRED Avenue, but finally they've found a great new name, Yubi. So very excited to be here. This is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I'm sure a lot of you are also thinking about how companies that really have a strong product culture, how do they arrive at it? How do they exercise it on an ongoing basis? How do they preserve it? And how do they evolve it? And so I'm going to speak a little bit about how we do some of this at CRED and from some of my prior experiences as well. Just as a quick introduction for everyone, I've been with CRED for close to about 2 years. A key part of our super sort of scale up journey. It's been a true rocket ship, and some of the learnings that we've had along the way are life learnings for me as well. Prior to this, I used to be a chief strategy officer at a company called Times Internet, where we built several internet products all the way from news and entertainment to fintech and real estate and video and a whole bunch of other things. That's sort of my background. The thing that comes to mind when we speak about a product first culture is it's generally fairly easy to sort of have get caught up in these keywords that you keep hearing from the great product makers out there, right? We've all seen Steve Jobs videos. We've all seen a lot of other inspiring people go out there and talk about succinct ways in which they make things. While the boring fact I'm going to tell you is that behind the scenes there is a lot of process. It's not a moment of inspiration after moment of inspiration after moment of inspiration. People get to this ability to repeatedly do great product and keep building on it because they have a great process. And the fundamental sort of ingredients of a great process are a set of great operating principles and values. And so one of the things that we often forget is that we all collaborate and we work in teams. So the product making process is not a solitary process. The product is something that you're developing for a customer who may or may not be in the room with you at that point in time. You're developing it for a market for whom you may not necessarily have a very good understanding of. You'll be working with engineers, salespeople, a lot of stakeholders in the process who may not necessarily be in the middle of the product making and the product imagination process. So the product teams and the product managers and the product leaders' job is really to sort of think about stakeholders from a first principles basis. What does the customer want? Why do they want it? And be able to distill that into a bunch of very, very core, simple first principles that they can then make choices on. Jumping into CRED, the way we do that is by what we call CRED values. And while some of these values are organizational values in terms of how we work with each other, but the bulk of these values are based on how we build things, and we build these things for customers. And I'll walk through a few of our core values, and then Krishnendu, we can jump into a conversation and go back and forth. So, look, CRED is a fairly unique company from the lens of what it does. And I'll say something which is probably controversial, but fairly true, which is most of the products that we have that are out there today aren't really net new from the get-go, right? You could pay your credit card bills before CRED came along. We just made it a lot better. You could shop before CRED came along. We just made it a lot better. You could invest before we came along. We've done our own flavor to it. You earn rewards before we came along. Again, we made it a lot better, and we made it different. So how do you do that, right? And so the first thing we think a lot about, the first value is solve elegantly. What that really means is that, customers really don't have time or the ability to put in the effort. And so whatever we put in front of them has to be really, really elegant, has to really save them time, drive a lot of value, and really be best in class when it comes to peers and competitors and potential other ways of doing stuff. And so you can't settle for mediocrity, right? Solving elegantly means not settling for mediocrity. So that's one of our core values. The other core value is compounding. When we launch things, we don't want to do things which are just purely linear or will continue to be linear, over a period of time. Products, features, uh, product flows, user experience, everything has to be compounding. It has to keep getting better the next time you come back. It has to keep anticipating what you might want, and that's what great software really does. The next one really is something that we call truth seeking, and truth seeking is something which is almost as boring as the 5 why framework, but we apply it really really strongly in that we want to go all the way down to the core motivations of your user or the enterprise you're working with or whoever the stakeholder is. You want to really go down all the way deep into the core motivations, and at that point be able to very authentically be able to say, are we sticking and are we delivering on those sort of core needs that the customer has? And this is done, in a very very robust and a very very intense manner, which is truth seeking enables random opinions to not creep into the room. Truth seeking enables you to bring data to a discussion and not just have the strongest voice or the most senior voice in the room end up getting their way or end up biasing decision making too much. And so this is one of those moments where one of those values rather where being able to apply this becomes really really important. And I think the combination of these things over time really sort of, for a lack of a better word, start to compound. And so the set of choices that you make are really, really important. The last thing I want to talk about, and then we can jump back, is Audacity. Taking big bets. What's the point otherwise, right? We are all here to build, elegant things that are distinct, unique, better, create lots of value for our customers. And if we don't aim high enough, we're doing all of us, each of us a disservice. And so these are some of the core values that we operate with. And these are applied pretty much, at the macro strategy level. They're applied at the sprint planning level. They're also applied on the sales and the marketing and the go-to-market. And so really the product thinking and the product first mindset isn't just about one part of the journey. It's about making it available throughout the journey. And so, that's how we operate. That's what's keeping us excited. That's what keeps us going. So, Krishnendu, over to you. Anything that particularly strikes your fancy?
Sure, Miten. Thank you. Thanks a lot for spending the time with us. Much appreciated. And this is fantastic. Like solve elegantly, compounding, truth-seeking, Audacity. These are certainly like great values to have. But I had a quick question for you, right? Saying that an organization also morphs, right? New people join in, right? New challenges. You go to new markets and all that, right? What steps you have taken or what you have seen working, that how do you codify this culture, product culture, and how do you sustain it in the face of as new people join in? It is very important that, yes, you are not blinded by saying that, aise hi hota hai, but also taking the good parts and keep enriching your culture. So how do you do that?
So I know exactly what you mean, Krishnendu, and I think this happens a lot, right? It's a very astute question. It's very, very hard to maintain this, scale this, and I can kind of apply this on an active basis. I'll take 3 examples for this. So one of the things that we do is that these values are very clearly articulated at people's joining process. So anyone who joins the company, we have a very, very strict, and sometimes people even get bored by the amount of content we get them through. But it's very important for us to make sure that the first week that you're at CRED, you really get to see and you really get to hear a lot of the stories of what we did, why we did, how did we do it, what kind of got us here. And in those examples, these values are very deeply embedded. So people who are coming into the system anew, they get to see this as part of the onboarding process. So that's kind of step one. Step two is kind of at the end of this, from a how do you test this point of view, is that we have a very strong feedback culture at the company, and part of the truth seeking culture also comes. It's kind of correlated, right? Truth seeking. We have another value called radical candor. Uh, when we give feedback to each other, when we give feedback to peers, when we give feedback to our seniors, our juniors, we actually encourage everybody to anchor the feedback on a value and don't give feedback if it's not assigned to a value. Or if there's a new value that you want to come up with, let's talk about adding a new value. So that's the second place where we do it. And then the third place where we do it is actually when we do our annual and semi-annual appraisal cycles. We actually ask, again, people to give feedback to each other and tie them to specific values. So, for example, what we do is we say, what are some values where this person really excels? What are some values where this person can do better? Right? And these things are kind of codified there. So on the input funnel, on an annualized funnel, and then also on an ongoing basis when we get, and by the way, often we have strong debates when we have disagreements, and we have lots of them at the company. It's quite fun. It's quite scary sometimes, where we get into heated debates. Again, you bring it back down to the values. Like, hey, listen, you're not adhering to this, or if we applied this, it wouldn't work. So that's how we do it, but it's extremely hard, and it's something you have to constantly keep cultivating and fight.
And thanks for being so candid. And I guess that comes from your radical candor. But no, I think like CRED is certainly an iconic organization, and you have done a brilliant job in terms of sustaining it, right? So that's what becomes very, very important. Slightly switching, because this is one question which has come out, is that how do you sort of use design? See, design is center and front. Everybody wants to do the best, right? But how do you sort of take design and use it as a very effective tool to maintain the promise of customer empathy? Okay, because
yeah. No, that's a great question. I think specifically customer empathy, right? And I think there are a few things I want to talk about here, right? Which is, I think one of the things we were quite, I want to use the word lucky, is that we have a phenomenal design team. And we actually don't even think of them as designers. We actually think of them as artists inside the company, right? And so, this is a team that's constantly looking to push the envelope. They are actually saying, look, can we make beautiful software? And the word beautiful and software and design, don't necessarily go with fintech apps, right? Fintech apps are supposed to be very, very numbers and clear and clarity and serious stuff, right? And everything that we do is the opposite of that, right? It's, while the serious stuff is there, it's also fun. By the way, we were one of the first apps that came out in fintech, and the app was all black, right? And so that was again something very counterintuitive that the team did. But when it comes to customer empathy, there are a few principles that we apply. One is we try to do minimum decision making for the customer per screen. One decision per screen. Right? If you think about it, sometimes we have way too many screens. But we know from our past experience, and we know from our data, right, from a truth-seeking perspective, and we know from, funnels and whatever, that, listen, one decision per screen, very legible, very well designed, of course, almost looks like art, is something that's very important. The second thing we keep in mind is that don't assume that the user has a lot of time. Right? So put the obvious stuff right there. Call out things that you want to absolutely make sure they want to see. It kind of ties back into the first thing, which is one decision per screen. The last thing we think a lot about is this really, really the best in the world? And again, I'm telling you, Krishnendu, it's easy to say, but when you have the rest of your values, your radical candor, your compounding, your audacity, and then you ask this question, is this really the best in the world? That really opens up a whole new discussion and a whole new level of execution. In fact, in our interviews, and in my interviews in particular, my favorite question of people, whichever role I'm hiring for, is what is your benchmark of excellence? And tell me why. If a person cannot talk about something which they're really inspired about for at least 5 minutes, you know that they're likely to not fit our culture.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, so I think that answers. Like, for example, some of the startups, they often take design as an afterthought. You know? Like let's launch the product, move fast, right? There is a huge bias for action. And then design somehow like sort of say, hey, I'm also there, right? Somewhere they come in, right? And,
Yeah.
So what will be your suggestion to...
So let me tell you something very counterintuitive, okay? I know that, you know, we all sort of heard the Mark Zuckerberg, move fast and break things philosophy. We are the opposite of that. We're the absolute opposite of that. We're extremely deliberate. We're extremely slow at shipping new things. And again, one of the things we think a lot about is that the first time we launch it, we want to get it right. And we don't want to get it out there and then see what happens and then, you know, hope it sort of works and then iterate 20 times and push 20 product releases to get there. We just hate it. And as a culture, in fact, what we've done is we've often delayed important product launches to make sure that we get this product well. In fact, last year, we had a product that we delayed launching by about 4 months. 4 months just to get it. And most of the organizations, they would be like, you know, religious wars. But in our case, we were like, listen, it's not there. So let's wait.
Got it. No, that takes a lot of courage. I can say that, okay, you know what, today, like for a lot of product and folks, we measure that, okay, what have we shipped like last week.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I guess this goes as part of your codification of your culture as well, right? Saying that, okay, you know what, I can see that in all the culture, all the values that you said, the top 4, I am assuming you covered.
Yeah.
Obviously, move fast was not there. So it was more saying that, yes, we have to give the best experience.
Speed is actually not in any of our values. There is urgency and speed. They're 2 different things, right?
Correct.
Knowing what's urgent, knowing what's important, and moving fast. These are 3 different things. But speed is not in any of our things. Compounding is our value. Delivering outcomes is value. Earning trust is value.
Okay.
Solving elegantly is value.
So let me sort of push you a little bit here, okay? So I know, like, okay, you know what, everybody wants to do the best for their customers. And actually, you mentioned something very interesting that, okay, you know what, process. Don't look at process as something bureaucratic, but as I said, process makes you achieve repeatability, right? And sort of this. Have there been cases where it has gone wrong? Still with the process and how you as an organization respond and not react also becomes important. So how do you do that? Because I'm sure like somewhere something might have gone wrong as well. But there, the culture even shows up in a much brighter sunlight at that point.
No, that is when it actually gets. That's when it actually gets tested, right? That's when things are hunky dory. Like, you know, the tailwind basically just, you know, hides a lot of flaws, right? So when you hit a headwind is really where this gets it. I'll tell you a few examples, right? So recently we thought about a particular way in which we could do referrals, how people could refer their friends and bring them in and things like that. And it would be a very big bet for us from a growth point of view. It went, I would say, probably achieved 30% of our expectations, which is very, 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 very low for us, right? Extremely low, right? And you know, I'm telling you the facts. Right? I mean, like, it was really that bad. I think the way the organization reacted was to go towards, you know, back to a few core things, which is did we really do our best to put the product out there? Did we really? And by the way, we killed it pretty rapidly. It's not like we waited and waited and waited and waited. We had a certain window going in, knowing whether the outcome will, what are the early indicators of a potentially great outcome, right? And so I think that kind of becomes important to know going in what that'll be. What are the L1, L0, L1 metrics of potential success? I think respecting the inputs is really the most important factor. Outputs we can't all control. And then reacting fast when the data tells you that something's not really working. And then ultimately, it's going to get tested at the end of the cycle in terms of how we stack up a list of wins and losses, right? And I think to a large extent, this is one of the harder things to do when you really have to kill something. By the way, inside CRED, we have a feature kill group where everybody can sort of just come in and actually ask questions like, hey, I haven't used this feature in a long time. What percentage of users use this? Can I get some data? Right? And in fact, we encourage people to come in and submit ideas on killing features. So, by the way, the list of failures that we have is fairly large.
Okay. No, it has been fantastic, Miten. Thanks for your time and thanks for being so candid. I am sure the audience would have loved the radical candor that you showed here. And we have a lot to take away from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.